1, 4, 7, 2, 8. No, I am not just reading numbers for the sake of reading numbers. Today, we are going to be talking about Enneagram numbers. Now, you may be a bit skeptical of the Enneagram, but I encourage you not to tune out just yet. Jeff and Beth McCord, husband and wife of 30 years, and founders of Your Enneagram Coach, are passionate about utilizing the Enneagram as a tool for transformation through a faith-based lens. The Enneagram is just that, a tool, but the gospel is responsible for transformation. If you're at all curious about how these two worlds collide and how the Enneagram affects couples in their marriage, tune in to this fascinating conversation. Jeff, Beth McCord, thank you guys so much for joining me on the WinShape Marriage Podcast today. I'm delighted to have you guys.
Yeah, thanks. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know who you are. We were just chatting a little bit before the cameras officially started rolling, but would love for you guys to just kind of jump in here, kick us off. Tell us a little bit about y'all, your background. You guys founded, I believe, Your Enneagram Coach, right? So,
Yep.
Tell us just a little bit about you guys and your background, personal, professional, and kind of let our listeners know who you are.
Well, we got married at the age of 20, and we've been married 30 years. So, yes, we are now in our 50s.
It's a long time.
It is a long time. And we have been in ministry for many years until we started Your Enneagram Coach, which is kind of an extension of ministry. Mm-hmm. But we started learning about the Enneagram in 2001. So we had been married 6 years, had our own turbulence, had 2 kids by then, was just trying to figure out, like, why is this sometimes so hard, marriage? And so we've been using the Enneagram since then. We now have our 2 grown children, and we have our second grandbaby on the way. And we have his dad and my parents are both in their 80s. So we're in that season of life, the sandwich season, where we're really having to take care of our elderly parents, but also, wherever we can with our grandkids and stuff like that. So we're kind of in that sandwich busy season of life while still working and doing all the things that we do for Your Enneagram Coach. But it's also been a sweet season to learn almost how to be each other's support system and cheerleader, but in a totally different era. So it's just kind of been a really sweet relearning season for us. Even though we've been married 30 years, you really do kind of learn about each other all along the way.
I mean, it's a sad thing, but I bring humor to it. But my dad recently had a scare. He had a memory lapse that looked like dementia. It ended up being just a B12 deficiency, which is really scary. So drink your energy drinks. I think they have a lot of B12
Get your B12.
But Beth had a counseling appointment, and she took that appointment from my childhood bedroom. And I thought, oh, wow, like she's in ground zero where Jeff became an Enneagram 6.
Right.
And so, I mean, but it's interesting how we are still discovering new things, like driving around the city I grew up in. Even after 30 years, we're still learning about one another.
Mm-hmm. What a testament, and something that's just so cool to think about, how much you can learn and grow, and like the new things you'll be learning. I resonate with that in a different way, but I feel like I've been married coming up on 7 years, and we just welcomed our first baby, and so she's a few months old, and so we're in this brand new season too. So I feel like we were, getting a good grasp. Obviously not perfect, but I feel like I knew a lot about Cody and like who he was, and now I'm getting to relearn him as a kind of was already knowing kind of who he was as a husband, but now getting to relearn and see these new things emerge as a dad. And I'm sure I would think would say the same. So I think that's just a really cool testament to know that as you continue in your years of marriage, it's like there's still so much to learn, so much behind the door still in a beautiful way, not in like a hopefully not in like a shock and awe factor, but in a really sweet way. No, that's cool. Thank you guys for sharing. And so this wasn't on, I know we talked a little bit about some kind of the direction we wanted this conversation to go. And this wasn't something I mentioned, so I'm kind of throwing this at you guys on a whim. But to the best of your ability with like a one or two phrase, we don't need to go like deep dive. I'd love to quickly just maybe give the name and like a very brief description of each number. Of course, I know y'all's website has many resources. People can do their own deep dive if they're curious.
Sure.
But
the best place to go is yourenneagramcoach.com for motivations.
Perfect.
Or on our YouTube channel, I have a whole series on like Enneagram basics. What is the Enneagram? So people can definitely learn more about each of the 9 types and just the Enneagram as a whole on the YouTube channel. So that's a great place.
Okay.
So there's
there's
9 Enneagram types.
Yeah.
So the type 1 is the more principled reformer.
Okay.
And they don't want to be wrong, bad, evil, corruptible, or wrong. The type 2 is the nurturing supporter. They are fearful of being rejected, unwanted, and unloved. The type 3 is the admirable achiever. They fear being unsuccessful, failing, having no image or worth in other people's eyes. The type 4 is the introspective individualist, and they fear having their emotions cut off or not being able to be original or their authentic self. The type 5 is the analytical investigator, and they fear obligations being placed on them, their energy reserves being absolutely depleted, and not having the information they feel they need to move forward in life. Now, the type 6, which is what Jeff is the faithful guardian, and they fear being without support, guidance, and support, being targeted and alone. The type 7 is the entertaining optimist or the enthusiastic optimist. And for them, they fear actually having to face the hard emotions, being trapped in emotional pain, being deprived, bored. Oh my word. Boredom is like kryptonite to them. And then the type 8 is the passionate protector. They fear being manipulated, harmed, others controlling them, and being at the mercy of injustice. And the type 9s, which is me, the peaceful accommodators, we fear any kind of discord, tension, not getting along with others. We're just wanting peace and harmony.
And one of the reasons that you'll hear numbers versus titles, the numbers don't carry any nuance to them. So, meaning they're not positive or negative. Some of the names can lean,
people just can interpret them positive or negative.
Yeah,
and so you'll notice the names change with different teachers, but it always comes back to a number. We're not trying to say what's your number on a scale of attractiveness. That'd kind of be funny, particularly whenever you're in churches that it's really popular and they're like, yeah, she's a 2, like, oh, that's kind of mean. But no, they're talking about something entirely different.
Like, for instance, some teachers will call the type 1 the perfectionist. Okay. Well, a lot of type 1s don't appreciate that name. They think of that as a negative. So that's why we call them the principled reformers, because that's really what they feel captures who they are at more of a core level. So that's why we have different names, and we've just tried to use names that can point towards the positive aspects of each of the 9 types versus some of them being positive and some of them feeling like a sting and not so great. So that's why we have different names than some of the other teachers.
Yeah. No, thank you for running through that. And again, hopefully, if you are listening and this is completely brand new, that was just like a little taste, into what there is out there. But I'd love to dive in a little bit more, kind of jump into the Enneagram and marriage and how this kind of mesh. But before we dive completely into that, I'd love to kind of get just a baseline conversation going related to the Enneagram in general first, and then kind of jump into the marriage aspect of that, if y'all would be okay for that and up for that.
Sure. Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear just a little bit more about how your Enneagram coach, like what do you guys call it? a business, a company, but how it kind of came to be? Like, how did you guys?
All of those different things.
Okay,
That's right.
perfect. Ministry, yeah.
Well, so what had happened is we were on staff with the Navigators doing campus ministry for a couple of years, and our campus staff at the University of Kansas, we ended up all going to the Covenant Theological Seminary in St. Louis together. Well, they were a little bit older than us, nearing 30, maybe just beyond, having children, sometimes having trouble. And they, all of them kind of ended up in counseling and went to Covenant to become counselors. Well, their therapist introduced them to an Enneagram book. Well, as typical navigator folk do, is that the things you're learning, you pass on to those whom you're discipling and mentoring. And so he passed it along to me. Well, I'm reading for seminary, like I'm having to read 1-2 books a week. Well, Beth, I skim it, and Beth devoured it.
Yeah.
But it answered some key questions for you.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm an Enneagram type 9. So there's 9 personalities on the Enneagram. And the type 9s know themselves the least because we're trying to keep the peace by going along to get along. And so it really helped me to understand myself better, which was a really big missing piece for the two of us because I just wanted to go along with whatever he said. And he's like, no, I am trying to understand you. And so it really brought a lot of clarity to our relationship immediately. But then over the course of all these years, it's just continually helped us to understand each other at a core level because the Enneagram helps you to understand why you think, feel, and behave. So it's not just about what you do. It's really about your heart condition and why. And that is really what God is wanting us to focus in on. And therefore, as a married couple, we can focus in on there with a lot of humility, grace, compassion in ways that we weren't able to before we started using the Enneagram.
So fast forward a few years. So that was in 2001. We move around quite a bit. And then fast forward to 2008, we start talking about it with other people. This was just something quiet we used with our marriage.
You were a pastor at the time.
That's right. I'm a pastor. And then we started talking about our kids and their type when they were younger. And then we start sharing it with other people. Well, it caught on fast. And usually that's the progression is, what's my type? What's my spouse's type? What are my children's type? And then usually it kind of extends, coworkers, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it kind of took off. Well, then a big transition comes up. We moved to Nashville in 2014. I take on an executive pastor position. Beth gets a job with what was then Michael Hyatt and Company, their company was focused on building a digital platform. This was 2016, right before the Enneagram took off. And Beth wanted to start a coaching business to help pay for our kids' college.
Yeah.
That's all it was intended to do.
Okay.
It was her thing. I was going to stay in pastoral ministry. Well, after a year at that church, I step away. And our back's against the wall, like, what do we do? So I started a pastoral counseling and marriage mediation business, and Beth started Your Enneagram Coach, and hers still exists. Mine doesn't. She won. But we had no idea that a tsunami was coming.
Yeah.
And so what Your Enneagram Coach is the overflow of our personal engagement and use of the Enneagram.
Okay.
And then now we train others to do it. So we've trained over 2,500 coaches, business leaders, mental health professionals, in how to use the Enneagram in a variety of different domains.
And I will say, I think for this audience in particular, they would really love to hear our mission statement. So for us at Your Enneagram Coach, we're here to help people to discover and understand themselves with astonishing clarity so that they can
free.
so they can be free of shame, condemnation, and fear, so that by experiencing the unconditional love, forgiveness, and freedom in Christ. So in our mission statement, we don't even use the word Enneagram because it's just a tool. There are many tools to understand ourselves, but it's the gospel that brings transformation. And so that's really what we're about. So we could throw out the Enneagram or any of our other tools and just stick to what Scripture says, because at the end of the day, our identity is Christ and what He has done in and through us. So I just think that that's important. I think a lot of people out there, they have misconceptions about how people use the Enneagram or why. And we just really want to be upfront with people and like, yeah, it's a cool tool, but at the end of the day, we just really want to know who we truly are, and that's Christ beloved.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'm glad that you guys even, from like straight from the source, right, just walked us through that. I think that does kind of help maybe people listening that might have thought, I'm not so sure, just kind of have a deep breath and be like, okay, let's hear more of what they have to say, right? And I love that reassurance of like, this is a tool, it's a thing. There are a lot of personality tests and, quizzes and things you can do. Ultimately, we are sons and daughters of God, right? But there are these other things that we have access to, which is cool. But we don't have to identify, like our identity doesn't rest in that. So
Yes, exactly.
at least is what I believe I'm hearing.
Well, and
say.
the other really cool thing about the Enneagram that I think we gravitated to more than a lot of the other personality tools is the point of the Enneagram is to help us to understand truly our heart condition in any given moment. And when you pair that with the gospel, what we're trying to help people understand is your heart in the current moment or current season of life aligned, misaligned, or out of alignment with the truth of the gospel? So that's really what we're doing. And we're doing it so that there's not shame and self-condemnation and fear. It's, hey, we're struggling. We're all in this together, but we all can look at the finished work of Christ and rest and surrender in that time and time again. So our identity stays the same, but yes, our heart condition definitely fluctuates from time, from moment to moment. But if we had a tool that said, hey, you're starting to veer off course. Let's get back into alignment. That is what we're using it for, is to get our hearts aligned with Christ again, not so that we're focusing on the tool itself.
Yes, absolutely. You kind of touched on this in just sharing, but want to give another opportunity to just say, or to just ask, what are some of those criticisms that you guys hear? I know that might seem odd. Sometimes it's like, wait, are we starting with the criticisms? But I think that would help kind of like,
Totally
pull the curtain back, so, and give people that clarity that they might be looking for. So what are some things? Yeah.
I think one thing that people, how they misuse the Enneagram, there's actually many ways.
Yeah.
One way that they misuse, when we say you cannot use the Enneagram as a sword or as a shield. So we don't want to I don't want to say to my husband, though I know I have, you don't want to say, you're being such a 6 or you're being such a whatever, that just pushes people away instead of bringing one another close. The other thing is you don't want to use it as a shield where it's like, well, I'm a 9, so this is just who I am. Right. Take it or leave it. Like, the gospel taught is all about transformation, right? And it's about us becoming more and more like Christ. So if that is our model, then we want to use the Enneagram in that same light. So if you have friends and stuff that are like, well, I just, I'm a type 8, I'm just blunt. Well, yes, but there are ways to do it that are compassionate and kind and strong and help people. But I'm a type 9. I can be so passive. It can look almost nice, but it can actually have big detrimental effects, in which we've seen recently with a family member. It's like, wow, you are so passive. This is like painful. So we're just trying to help people grow closer into their true identity in Christ. But people can misuse it when they don't understand how to use the tool correctly.
And I think one of the bigger questions that you have, and usually Beth gives me the responsibility of answer some of these because of my theological training.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions about the origins of the Enneagram. And you can go to yourenneagramcoach.com/origins.
Okay.
We have an article there as well as 3 podcasts that we did with probably one of the best people who's done the most extensive research. His name is Tyler Zach.
Okay.
He's there. You'll be introduced to some of his research as well. And these are, the questions that people bring about the 2 people who had put together the most modern expression of the Enneagram. They were not Christians. They were Eastern mystics. And some of the concerns is that the stories that were told about how their ideas around the Enneagram, where they came from, because did they come from other sources, whether spiritual or psychological. And for Beth and I, we wrestled with those questions for years. And so for us, we either simply removed those concepts, those components to the Enneagram that didn't align with the Bible, or we redefined them. And so whereas maybe the Enneagram might focus on true self, we might speak in terms of the image of God and how God has made us. That it's not just through understanding ourselves that can bring change, but it's actually faith in something outside of ourselves, in a person, in having relationship with Jesus is what brings change. And so, but you can find out a lot more there, but please understand, one, it's great to ask the questions. We probably should be asking those questions more of other personality tools that we use, because the vast majority of them did not come from Christian expressions or Christian worldviews.
Right.
And yet, that doesn't mean that they're not available for a Christian to use. Christians have always used additional tools, including the scriptures. They don't supplant, they don't take priority over, but they are helpful resources for people to grow in their faith in their relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for that clarity. And absolutely, we can link even that specific page as well in the description of this episode.
I mean, it's interesting talking about marriage. I mean, we would never say like, oh, don't use John Gottman's content.
Right.
Because Gottman's Jewish and not Christian.
Right.
Clearly, this guy knows what he's
research,
talking about that's super practical and helpful for marriages.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, no, I appreciate that. And I want to kind of jump in now a little bit into how this kind of works in your marriage and in different seasons of marriage. Before I do that, I do have one other question related to your Enneagram number. So I'm curious, you guys, as you have mentioned so far, you're Jeff, you're a 6, and Beth, you're a 9. How much weight, so to speak, should someone be giving their Enneagram number?
I mean, I think it kind of depends on what you mean by that. Obviously, like we've been saying this whole time, like your identity is not your type, but what it's doing is it's helping you to understand why you end up doing what you're doing or thinking or feeling, all the way from healthy reasons all the way to very unhealthy reasons. So if you're wondering why you did something, why you thought something, why you felt something, the Enneagram's going to give you a roadmap to understand that. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean you're stuck. Like, I am a peaceful accommodator, but that doesn't mean I can't be assertive or have some strength or have courage.
And it's not even, that's only capturing a part of who you are.
So we have a book called More Than Your Number. And what we're really showing is that, yes, you have a main type, but we actually use and access all 9 Enneagram types to varying degrees. So really, and really kind of I wouldn't say so much it's the goal, but the healthier we get, the less we are holding so tightly to our main types, defensive strategies and mechanisms. And we're kind of like have opened up our hands, so to speak, like opened up our heart, and we're able to access other healthy qualities of the other types in really beautiful ways. And so that all being said, your main type does reign supreme in its core motivations. Again, why you do what you do. And so by understanding that, it just gives you almost like a flashlight into what's going on and why, so that you can steer yourself back into a healthier direction. That's really what we're looking for.
And it is interesting. One of the objections is that our identity is in Christ. We don't need a personality tool to give us that. 100% true. And we would discourage anyone saying that this somehow the Enneagram captures the entirety of who we are as people, because the Enneagram only measures certain things. It doesn't measure everything. And each Enneagram type, the way that we describe it, it's like and we're talking to couples here, so it's like a Sherwin-Williams paint color. Whenever you want to paint your firstborn child's room and you're looking for blue, Yeah, there's 1,000 different blues.
Literally me a few months ago, I must have brought home 25 swatches of purple, and Cody was like, I didn't know this many colors of purple.
Or like white.
Or shades.
Who knew that there were so many whites?
So just because Beth is married to a type 6 doesn't mean that I'm like all the other 6s.
In fact, he actually mistyped himself for years because my mom's a type 6 and they look nothing alike from an outside perspective. But at the core, their core motivations are the same. And so he was like, well, I'm nothing like your mom. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. And so he mistyped for a long time and that's people, they typically want to type themselves from behaviors or things that they can see in others. And that is just not what the Enneagram is about. It's all about the why. It's about your core motivations. And each person has to identify themselves, because you can look at someone and think they're a type, but there are so many layers to the Enneagram, which is what Jeff is speaking to.
And this is why we don't type kids until they're much later in life, because there's so many different dynamics.
Layers, there's life story, the things
Our
that are
son didn't want to
on.
buy a set of speakers, and I knew he had the money for it. And I'm like, well, what's keeping you from buying? He says, Dad, I've got you in my head. So what's him? What's me? We don't know. He's been with me for 20 years. So give the guy a break.
No, absolutely. Okay, very cool. Let's jump in. I'm curious how you guys have seen this kind of play out in marriages. So let's just jump in with, you and your spouse have a different number, a different Enneagram number. How are you seeing that play out in marriages?
Yeah, I mean, like it can be as funny as this one story I'm going to share with you. But before I share the story,
please.
So again, everything comes back to the core motivations. And so at Your Enneagram Coach, we teach that there are 4 core motivations. Okay. Your personality has a core fear, what it's always running away from, a core desire. It's like, oh man, if I just get this, life's going to be perfect. And then you have a core weakness. Other teachers call it the passion or the deadly sin. And this is what is constantly tripping you up. Think of it as a thorn in your side, your Achilles heel. And then the last is the core longing. This is the message your heart longs to hear and experience. Okay. So your internal core part of you is constantly operating from these 4. Now, so when you understand the core motivations of each type, everything starts to make way more sense. So we had a type 2 and a type 3 couple. And this is a lighthearted example, and we can get into harder examples.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
But we were sitting down for dinner with them and another couple. This was before a marriage retreat. And
so we do live events for churches, date night events. And so we usually like to interview a couple on stage and show how it applies.
So we'll eat with them beforehand and just kind of get to know them and talk them. Totally. Just listen to their scenario, and then we'll talk them through what we're going to do with them, so they're not surprised. Totally. So anyway, they're telling us this story. Well, this husband was a type 3, and they're the admirable achievers. They're like, they're going to kill it. They're going to get it done. They're going to be winners. They're going
to be the best at everything.
The best at whatever it is. And so he makes the best, according to him, smoothies every morning. Okay. He's figured it out. He's got it down into this efficient way.
Even the process.
Everything.
Everything.
It's just perfect, right? Okay. So his wife, who is a lovely type 2, knows this is so important for him.
Give the name of the 2.
So the 2 is the nurturing supporter. Okay. So she's at the grocery store getting all the groceries, and she's like, I'm going to support my husband. And I'm going to nurture him. I'm going to get him these extra frozen berries, maybe blueberries and peaches and whatever. So she comes home with all of this good stuff. And the next day she comes down the stairs and she notices that he didn't pull out any of those extra berries. So she's like, hey, did you know that I bought these extra berries for you? And he was so put off.
Now, if you've been married longer than a honeymoon, you know this situation where it's super simple and you've totally missed each other. Yeah. Like she's like,
oh, I'm loving well.
I'm loving well. What is your problem? And he's like, I don't want to be honest with you.
Right.
But you're totally missing each other.
Yeah. So for him, it landed on his type 3 heart as if she were saying, you're really not that successful at making the perfect smoothie. I have other suggestions for you. That's how it landed on him.
Yeah, that's the thoughts that are going on in his head, is that my wife is telling me I'm not doing it right.
Yeah, I'm not successful. I'm not good enough.
Which is not it at all.
Which is so not what she was trying to say. She's thinking, I'm killing it. I'm being the most nurturing supporter ever. And so when he gets, kind of blindsided by it, right? That's how he's feeling like, and he's then kind of put off, and he's kind of showing a reaction, but he's trying not to, right? So it's kind of a both and then she's like, wait, how is this a problem? I'm just trying to be nice and loving. And then he's like, great, now we're in it, we're in this dance. And so from our perspective right here, listening to the podcast, it seems so elementary, but it's these interactions that take place that are really benign for the most part, that build and build and build, because we each have our own personality lenses on, so like glasses, that we're seeing and experiencing the world through. And we think everyone else is too, our personality, that's like, well, don't they see it my way? Like, this is obviously the way it is. And so when someone does something counter to that, it hurts us or upsets us. And so the husband...
And this is the easy one.
This was the easy one.
Think about what happens whenever you're parenting and your child is looking at you and your spouse like, are you guys going to agree on how you're going to parent me? Because then the argument is no longer about how to discipline, but what we don't agree with one another.
It sounds it's fun to laugh at, and it can seem silly. But what landed on him was that she doesn't think I can do this well. And so he's feeling disrespected, dishonored. And then she's put off that how could he think I'm not loving him? That's exactly what I'm trying to do. So they're both feeling distant from one another. And even though it may be a minor circumstance, by having those circumstances over and over and over again, it starts to create a chasm.
Yeah.
Now, then you add the bigger dynamics like Jeff was talking about, and it just makes it even worse and harder. And we really think the other person is doing this on purpose. So he's thinking, she's telling me, she's quietly telling me, I don't know what I'm doing. And if you keep going in that direction, thinking your spouse is purposely doing these things, then it is going to cause major ramifications. So the Enneagram helps us to understand what's going on, and we call it the dance. So what is going on with the wife's personality that's landing on the husband in a certain way, and vice versa?
And let's give another example of this.
Okay.
So in the month of August, my father had a health scare. And so we go down there. Your inclinations on how to help my dad were different than mine. What do you think? What did you notice about yourself while we were there?
I first did not want to overstep. I didn't want to go against his wishes. I wanted to know what he wanted and try my best to accommodate to his wishes and needs.
But the difficulty is that he
didn't have the capacity.
That's right. His faculties weren't online the way they should have been.
So he wasn't able to fully say or capture what he wanted, and yet we had a time crunch to get his house in a way that would be livable long term.
Yeah.
So
Which is funny that it went from his medical care to the house.
Right. Well, I mean, it was just
and there were a lot of medical things that we had to do during that time period. How would you describe my response? I know what I was feeling inside, or not feeling, or doing my best to not feel.
I think there's part of it that you were a little uncertain. You maybe would have appreciated reassurance from him, but again, there wasn't the ability for that to take place.
So it's interesting, like in a moment like that, where we can start to think, like, where is my spouse right now? I need their help, and they're not coming through in the way that I hoped. That doesn't mean that they don't love, they don't want to support, but they're coping with a very confusing and challenging situation, but according to the lens of which they see things. And so plus, I'm not just another six.
Right. You have a story with that family, with that house.
And so, but you're exactly right. each of us were attuning to my dad and trying to do what's best in the way that we saw fit. And sometimes that was different for one another. And sometimes that can lead to arguments, or it could actually be an opportunity to learn.
Well, and I think you did a great job, though. I think in our younger years, not that you wouldn't have done a great job, we just wouldn't have done as great of a job.
I love that. That's great.
But what I mean by that is, like, we're at a stage in life where we've had enough reps in marriage that you're like, I know she's
Do we really want
meaning
to have
well.
that fight again? Because we've been doing that for years.
No, I think you were like, I know you're meaning well. Because, like, I was getting stuff done. Like, I wanted to not sit around.
That's so funny you say it that way, because I was scared of you getting things done because we didn't have his permission. We came down there to help get his brain back online, and you were cleaning his house because my mom died in 2000, and so he's lived alone for all these years, and the house was just kind of a mess.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, if this 82-year-old is going to live here for many more years, which his dad lived into his 90s, so that there is the potential, then
You got to get the home organized.
Need to get the home organized, even if he doesn't want to, which goes against the type 9 mentality. But the ultimate goal, which this gets into many layers of the Enneagram. So, like, my type 8, wing was like, we're going to plow this path and get this done, but I'm going to try to do it as nice as possible. But what I was going to say is that you gave me charity, because we had discussions when you started seeing me get things done.
I don't know if I've ever heard you use that word before, but I gave my wife charity. How about that?
But you were like, hey, I can see that you're wanting to get a lot done. And you didn't say it this way, but you were kind of like, can we just slow the roll just a tiny bit, And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm kind of overstepping. I love your dad too, and I'm kind of overstepping. This is literally your father and your family, and I know you want my help, but I also have to take a step back and let you lead. And after that, I think we were able to tag team much easier. There wasn't as many, oh, great, are we going to step on each other's toes?
So this is, like Beth mentioned, this is what we call the dance. And it's our unique contribution to the Enneagram community. It's in our book, Becoming Us. And then we've got individual courses for all 45 couple types. And it's specific to the dance, the dynamics that happen between two Enneagram types. And it's kind of interesting because I heard this later on, but I hear that John Gottman, when he sits down with his wife and they need to have a serious conversation, he sits down with a notebook and he says, let's dance. Meaning, let's get into it together and learn the rhythm, one another's rhythms and moves, so that we can actually dance together rather than tripping over one another. And the Enneagram gives us that possibility. It's not going to answer all of your questions.
It's like a cheat sheet. It doesn't do the work for you, but it just helps you to understand what's going on and why, so that you can have the conversation, so you can work together.
Couples typically say, like, oh, that's why you do that. Or now I understand. That gives them empathy and insight into one another so that they don't miss each other in these pivotal moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that can be so small as blueberries for a smoothie, right? And then can transition into something so serious as caring for your parents well. And still honoring your spouse in the process, and then your parents or in-laws in the process.
With that smoothie,
right?
The wife, she didn't do anything wrong, but could she have done something different? Yes, she could have said, you know what, you totally kill it with your smoothies, and I'm so glad that you love it. But when I'm at the store, I just have this urge as a type 2 to want to, like, get you more things to try. Would that be helpful, or would that actually be offensive, or what would that be for you? And so just opening the conversation. So you're saying, hey, I have a desire to love you. I just don't know if the way that I want to go about it is the way that you'll receive it that way. And then have that kind of discussion. And then it could be a whole, he might be like, you know what, I really do like what I'm doing. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you like wanting, but no. Or he might be like, you know what? Yeah, go ahead and pick me up some blueberries. I'll try that too. You know, you never know. And so
If you're married to a type or type 2 or a type 3, you know this dynamic.
Yeah.
Like you could even have a buzzword like blueberries.
Yeah.
You're helping too much right now.
Yeah. No, I love the idea that this just provides language around
Good
just
word.
language around like what you're actually experiencing, right? And helping just to kind of provide a little bit of clarity to the situation at hand. And I loved even hearing what you guys said too about like you've got some reps in, right? And so 30 years, I think you have a lot of good reps in, right? And
But just because you have a lot of years doesn't mean that you've actually done the work.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh man.
I can attest to this because my husband's been walking pretty much almost 6 days a week. I was going to say every day, but you take a day off here and
take
there.
breaks, yeah.
But since his bypass surgery, he walks 3-4 miles every day. I don't. So we've lived the same amount of years, but I've not put in the reps, the steps that he's put in. So even though we've had the years under our belt, doesn't mean that you've put in the work. And so that's what's so important, is to really put in the reps or the steps into the relational dynamic that you have.
Now, I know that for majority of people, probably, I'm guessing, at least I don't know this with 100% certainty, but my assumption would be that a lot of people, with there being 9 types, they're different. Them and their spouse are different. But not everybody. There's going to be the spouses out there that are the same.
Yep.
And is there any like 1 or 2 things that you guys have seen in couples that maybe do share the same Enneagram number?
It's predictable, but it's no different than any other combo type. But we know a type 8 husband and wife, and the spoon drops on the ground and it almost escalates to nuclear war quickly, and they have to navigate that energy. Quickly. But then one of the first couples that Beth coached, they were both 9s.
Oh gosh! Yeah.
And there could have been a nuclear war outside, and they won't fight.
Yeah. And so, what we usually just tell, because people say, well, are there like better Enneagram types together? Or should I be looking for a certain spouse, because I'm this type? And no, it all has to do with the levels of health. So if you have 2 healthy, whatever types married together, they're going to do really well. Now, we're still on this side of heaven. So we're still going to struggle.
Totally.
But if you have the tools, the desire, the resources, and the will to communicate and have these kinds of understandings, you can get through a lot. But the more unhealthy you get, the harder the dynamics will be. And it does not matter it matters what 2 Enneagram types are, only in the sense of what the dynamics will play out. So like you were saying, 2 9s, they're going to literally go silent and nothing's going to happen.
And keep this in mind when we talk about the idea of the Sherwin-Williams paint colors. So there are 9 basic types.
Right.
But then there are 3 subtypes to every type. And so that means that there's actually 27 types. And then there's other layers to the Enneagram that differentiate.
And then each type has a wing or 2 wings. And so then you get up to 81, and then it just keeps going and going.
So even if they are of the same basic number, the reality is that they're 2 entirely different people. And they've have a different experience of that Enneagram type. So let's say there's Beth, if a type 9 grew up in Beth and I's home, they would probably feel more comfortable and more intentional with their 9ness than if they grew up in another couple's homes who weren't aware of that child's 9ness. Maybe it wasn't encouraged, or they would have had a discouraging experience. So even our family has a relationship to our type that can change and make the type look different in adulthood.
Yeah, I was going to say the first thing that came to my mind as you were speaking, is just because you might be the same Enneagram number, man, you were raised in completely different homes, right? You might have, I'm an only child. My husband was one of four. And then there were some step siblings and stuff as well that came later on. Right. And so we bring just completely different backgrounds to the table as far as how we were raised in, the homes we were raised in, you know? So I think that just reminds me from earlier in this conversation when it's like, you know, it's not all wrapped up in just this identity of this weight of this one thing that's like you, and you know, there's a lot of layers to you and stuff too. Yep. And so,
well, that's why, like when we train our coaches or mental health practitioners with the Enneagram, so whether they're going the coaching route or they're going to use it in a therapeutic route, they're able to more quickly get to, so like from the coaching standpoint, goals, you know, or things that they're moving towards in life. Or for the therapist, they're able to kind of short circuit or get to some of the reasons why they had different traumatic experiences or hardships. So it doesn't do the work, it just gives the insight so that you can get to it much quicker and understand it better.
Yeah, I would just be curious, as we're getting toward the end of our time, just if you had, you know, a takeaway to leave I would be thinking, you know, of our audience in this. So a takeaway to leave for the married couple as it relates to their Enneagram numbers, but just as it relates to their marriage and the fact that, you know, we are, as you said earlier, like we're all sinners on the side of heaven, right? Like we're all imperfect people. And so we're just doing the best that we can to like love and honor our spouse well. Of course, we'll trip up from time to time. And that might be part and do in part to kind of how we're wired a little bit. So yeah, I just would love to give each of you kind of the floor for a final thought or takeaway for a couple listening.
Yeah, I think for me, I just want to encourage people that the Enneagram on one side is a very complex personality typology. So you could get into the weeds and you could study it for years and years and years, but it can be very simple to use. And it's in the simplicity of it that can really help relationships grow. So when we're teaching, particularly our Becoming Us marriage courses that we have, and each one, so there's 45 of them, each one is customized for that couple. We're really focusing in on the core motivations. So we're not even getting into all the layers and the nuances, because what we found is that if you really understand the core motivations and what's going on, kind of like we talked about the smoothies, you can get so far with one another in your relationship. You don't have to know all the layers and all the nuances. So I just really encourage people to look at Enneagram resources, whether it's ours or others, that bring the complexity into a simple and easy to use format so that you can use it in your marriage right away. Just think, we want it to be a cheat sheet, something that they can get to quickly and access wherever they're at, so that when they're in the car driving, like to their, you know, parents' house or whatever, they can have a real conversation and get much further than they would without that resource.
Yeah, two things come to mind. One, personal, and then two, practical.
Yeah.
I was a pastor. If I could come up with another P, I'd do it. Personal. So in light of my family that was pretty broken, I was adopted, and then because my mom couldn't have children, she would later die of the illness that prevented all of that in 2000. And there was a lot of sorrow, there's a lot of pain, a lot of hospital type stuff. And so I've been attending a recovery meeting since then called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. I've been doing that for 10 years. And 2 years ago, I came across a serenity prayer I had not heard before. Now, many of us know the typical serenity prayer: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then I found out about the ACA serenity prayer. It bothers me every time I say it out loud. And I hope it, like, I had a professor who had a sign behind him. He was a counseling professor. He said, if you're not angry and confused, I haven't done my job. Well, hopefully this is going to make you angry and confused. But this is how we use the Enneagram. God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that one is me. Using the Enneagram is not intended to be a tool to change your spouse or to change your kids. It is intended to be a tool for you to help you understand yourself and to know how to access parts of you where you can show up in your relationships, whether that be professionally or spiritually or personally. So that's the personal one. Is that use the Enneagram for yourself. I promise you're going to get way much further than trying to change your type 9 spouse, even after a lot of reps of 30 years. But the second one, practical. So this is like, what are you going to go do now? So number one, our first book was a marriage book, Becoming Us. And so one, I would encourage you to go grab it, because at the back of the book are these 8 pages that speak to each Enneagram type. And the first part of it is understanding me. And then there's 2 pages for the spouse to read about understanding them, about how they can relate to them better. Super practical. Get it everywhere. But the website is called becomingus.com. And on that page, you can, once you find your type, here's what's going to happen. Wives, you're going to go find your type. And your husband's not going to want to. 45% of husbands don't want to do it. So number one, husbands, I'm going to say this for your spouse. Number one, she's going to promise to not use it to criticize you more. Number two, this is not like other personality tools that you've done at work that don't translate to anything or mean anything. And number three, no one's going to put you in a box. We're going to be curious about your personality and your experience. So now go take it. Okay, so get over the fears and go take it. Once you find out your couple type, go to becomingus.com, because we have a free 6-page summary of each of the 45 couple types. So you can go there and find the type 9 and type 6 couple type and get 6 pages on the dynamics as it relates to core motivations, spirituality, family of origin, communication, conflict, and becoming your best self together. That's the best place to start.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, so the brief recap would be from Beth, just kind of taking a deep breath and understanding the simplicity of it as well, that it doesn't have to be maybe as scary and daunting. And then Jeff, I'm hearing the personal and the practical, so using it as a tool for you as an individual, and then practically using that free resource that you guys offer for your marriage. So hopefully that kind of covered that.
Great job.
Okay. Okay, good. I wanted to make sure.
And I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes and all that stuff.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Well, I have thoroughly just enjoyed this conversation, getting to know you guys a little bit better, hearing some of those stories, the heart behind why you do what you do. So I've enjoyed our time and just grateful that you guys joined me today on the WinShape Marriage Podcast.
Yeah.
So thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, take care. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the WinShape Marriage Podcast. Go find out your Enneagram number, and we'll see you right back here next week. We hope that conversation blesses your marriage. If you're loving the WinShape Marriage Podcast, will you please take a moment to make sure you're subscribed? You may be a faithful listener and not realized you aren't subscribed. It really helps us out. Also, if you've enjoyed these conversations and they've impacted your marriage, please rate and review this podcast. One listener said, "Thanks so much for pouring into couples with godly wisdom and practical equipping.